Okay, here we go on our next section. Ding, 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 the escape. We are back to Mexico. This flashback period is over. We've learned a little bit about Rey Maceo and his talking parrot now. And perhaps you'll recall that the parrot had something to say when the Pasha, when we first met the Pasha with Rey Maceo in that old beat-up hotel room across from the courthouse. Maybe that was our first indicator that there was something special about that parrot. But now we're back to Mexico City, 1967, and there's Remesio. Ding ding, that part's over. This is titled The Escape. The memory of Minas Nuevas left Remesio shaken. He had never been able to touch the arrowhead without feeling his brother's presence. Lately, that presence seemed to be growing stronger, and as it grew, so did Remesio's guilt. He had become a thief, and was now thinking of becoming a kidnapper and a murderer. Trying to block those thoughts from his mind, he stared straight ahead, trying to empty and harden his heart. If you wanted to survive, you had to be tough. Life had taught him well. One-eyed Felipe had to pry Remesio's handcuffed hands from the obsidian arrowhead and lead him through the front door of the police station. It was time to act. "Passport violation," was all One-Eye needed to say. The desk sergeant winked and directed them to the basement jail cells, just as the Pasha had arranged. The row of cells was unguarded. This wasn't much of a prison. It was filled mostly with vagrants and barroom brawlers who were cooling off, waiting to see the judge in the morning. Most of them would get nothing more than a fine or a slap on the wrist. The two impostors walked down the jail corridor until they came to the cell they wanted. The old man who had stolen the Jade Jaguar was sleeping soundly on a cot. Because of the man's advanced age, the authorities did not have the heart to place him in one of the tougher criminal holding tanks in the city. Though his crime was indeed serious, they did not feel he was dangerous. In fact, the city officials were rather curious and amused by the old man's nerve, which had allowed him to successfully steal the Jade Jaguar using a fake bomb. His refusal to speak was equally puzzling, and they hoped for better results later, after he had passed a few nights of incarceration. One-Eye Felipe quickly undid the handcuffs on Remesio, who then proceeded to pick the jail cell lock with an old but handy pocket knife. The old man woke as the cell door swung open. He sat there silently as the two men entered. "Come on, old man, we're getting you out of here," ordered Felipe. "You two aren't the police," the old man calmly noted. "That's right, old-timer," said Remesio. "We're here to help you." "Ha!" The old man lay back down on his cot. "Go away. I'm in enough trouble as it is." One-Eye Felipe grabbed the old man violently. "You don't have much choice in the matter. You're going to come one way or another. It's up to you, you old relic." At the sound of that word, relic, Remesio felt himself shudder. One-Eyed Felipe made relic sound like something disdainful and worthless. Remesio knew it as something else. A relic was something that survived the passage of time, something cherished for its age. He remembered how Roan used the word. A relic was something of value. What was he doing? What had he become? Remesio pulled One-Eye Felipe away from the old man, barely able to hold his anger. "Get your grubby hands off him. Now get to the end of the hallway and keep your good eye out for the guards. I'll try talking to him." One-Eye Felipe, grumbling, walked to his lookout post and scowled. Remesio turned to the old man, not caring that One-Eye was upset. "Sir, I know what happened to you, and I want to help. Please come with me." "Do you want to help me or get your hands on the Jade Jaguar of Oaksmont? By the way, I didn't need your help with that little chihuahua. Your companion seems like trouble to me. And you know what they say, birds of a feather." The old man leaned back, folding his arms defiantly. "I think I'll take my chances here. I'm old and I don't really care what happens now." He smiled, thinking of another day, another time, and thought about how he would have handled these two troublemakers. Remesio studied the ancient thief. He looked at least 80 years old and could easily be older still. He had a white stubble beard and was missing most of his teeth. He wore a pair of leather sandals that looked as if they could fall off his feet at any moment, but his eyes were clear, steady, and honest. They were eyes that were not afraid, and Remesio sensed a real bravery about this old Indian. He wondered what had made this elderly man walk into the National Museum of Anthropology with a fake bomb so that he could take an old sculpture, a sculpture that was of interest mainly to historians and specialized collectors, something Rowan might have appreciated had he lived. Whatever this man's motivation, he did not belong in a jail. He needed a meal and a hot bath. Remesio placed his hands lightly on the prisoner's surprisingly sturdy shoulders. "Sir, that little Chihuahua is no friend of mine, and after tonight I do not plan on seeing him again. It's true that I came here to find the Jaguar, but it no longer interests me. I just want to get you out of here. Believe me, we can do it easily. I just don't understand. I mean, why did you take it?" The old man looked back into Remesio's eyes. He saw a young man who had been hardened too soon in his life, much like himself. But beyond his hard edges, this interesting gringo who looked almost Mexican seemed to have a good spirit. He decided to trust him. Slowly, getting up, he began to tell his story. "My name is Octavio Chotec Sanchez." Hey, Sunnysiders, remember that name? And a tough little hurricane? Next section, ding, ding, ding. The Pasha gets the Jaguar. So hopefully at this point, you've put together that the old man is Octavio, the young boy who discovered the Jaguar so many years ago, back in the 1800s. And now he's an old man in a jail cell, and interestingly, Remesio's path is crossed with Octavio Chotec Sanchez, who carries the name of his forefathers from so many years back when the Jaguar was first sculpted. So let's continue. Ding, ding, ding. The Pasha gets the Jaguar. 2 days later, and hundreds of miles away from Mexico City, in a cluttered room above a cafe in the market district of Merida, on the Yucatan Peninsula, the Pasha was angrily drumming his fingers on the top of a rusty metal desk. His dark, nervous eyes shifted about, occasionally glancing down at the note that obnoxious parrot had brought to him. The instructions said he would be met in this uncomfortable room if he, the Pasha, were still interested in obtaining the Jaguar. Naturally, the price had gone up, but the prospective buyer had agreed to make up the difference. He had squeezed himself into a chair behind the desk, placing a loaded revolver in one drawer and $50,000 in another. That double-crossing thief with the flashing green eyes was already 20 minutes late. The Pasha hoped that he would be using the money in the first drawer, although he didn't mind using the second drawer. When the trader Remesio finally arrived outside the door, announcing himself with a jaunty hello, the Pasha's blood began to boil. The second drawer looked better and better. It wouldn't be the first time he had used a gun. "Come in, please," said the Pasha, in the friendliest voice he could manage. Remesio Treviso walked in wearing a knapsack and the wide-brimmed hat that shaded the fire in his eyes. The Pasha frowned, and both men understood that they were now adversaries. But business was business, and the Pasha hoped to make the best of the strained circumstances. He grimaced and hoped it looked like a smile. "Please sit down, Remesio. Such a pleasure to have you here. Yes, have a seat right here. I'm sorry about the misunderstanding in Mexico City. Would you like some coffee? Perhaps something a bit stronger? Something like poison," he bitterly thought to himself. "Something to eat. Forgive me for not rising to greet you, but as you can see..." The Pasha gestured as if to show how difficult it would be to get his huge body out of the small chair. Remesio said nothing as he sat in a chair directly across from the Pasha. He took the Jaguar of Uxmal from his knapsack, placing it on the table. The Pasha's eyes widened greedily, and he clumsily lunged forward with his meaty hands in an effort to grab the artifact. Remesio quickly and smoothly pulled it away just out of the Pasha's reach. And just as quickly the Pasha's hand moved towards the drawer with the pistol. He pulled it open ever so quietly The two simply looked at each other until Remesio spoke. "The money first," he said softly. "And if anything happens to me, there are 3 armed men just down the hall," he lied. The Pasha regained his composure and once again tried to smile. His crooked, buttery teeth and dark, squinty eyes gave him the look of a hungry alligator. Carefully closing the drawer that housed the pistol, he moved his hand to the drawer with the money. He put a thick stack of bills on the table. "Here it is, all of it," exclaimed the Pasha, licking the sweat off his lips. $50,000, just as your note said. I'm curious as to how you arrived at the particular sum." And when no answer was forthcoming, the Pasha continued, "Anyway, go ahead and count it, Remesio. You know, I never got your last name." Remesio continued to ignore him and reached for the money, which he counted quickly. Satisfied, he passed the jade jaguar across the table. "My name's not important, but the money is." He rose to leave. "By the way," said the Pasha, "whatever happened to our little friend One Eye? I half expected him to be with you." "Poor Felipe," Remesio sighed. "He's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, is he?" The Pasha, opening the palms of his hands, nodded his head, acknowledging the truth of Remesio's statement, without uttering a word. "He traded places with our old man in the central courthouse," continued Remesio. "I'm sure he'd like to see you before he's convicted of helping a prisoner escape, you two being such good friends." Remesio tipped his hat and once again turned for the door. "Wait!" cried the Pasha. "I admit that I underestimated you before, but let's not have that stand in our way. Perhaps we could work together again. How can I contact you?" He was really thinking, "How can I find and kill you?" Remesio raised the brim of his hat and looked directly into the Pasha's eyes. For the first time during their encounter, he smiled. "We'll see each other again. You can count on it." He turned and walked out the door. The next section, the Pasha congratulates himself. Now alone and sure that he had outsmarted the thieving gringo Remesio, the Pasha took a moment to caress the precious creation in his ham-sized paws. It was an amazing piece of sculpture, supposedly buried with some Mayan priest who ruled over 1,000 years ago. But who was to say? That could just be a silly old tale. What he knew for sure was that after some local villager from Muna had fished it out of a cenote, or underground reservoir, the Mexican government had it taken, one could even say stolen, for display at the National Museum of Anthropology, far away in Mexico City. This had upset the villagers in the area who believed it was a source of power and magic. The jaguar had created for them a sense of local pride, which in its own way is a source of power. Some of the younger members of the village had even begun to refer to themselves as people of the jaguar. The Pasha wasn't concerned about the feelings of either the villagers or the Mexican government. He was concerned only with the wealthy gentleman in the next room who had submitted the largest bid to purchase the jade jaguar days earlier through the Pasha's black market network. The gentleman in the next room had even agreed to pay still more money after the misunderstanding with the gringo in Mexico City, whose deceit had forced the untrustworthy Pasha to raise the price. The buyer was a private collector from Japan who had raised his offer to $150,000, 3 times what the Pasha had paid Remesio. That would leave the Pasha $100,000, and that would buy a lot of enchiladas. The Pasha turned awkwardly in his chair and pounded the wall behind him. After a few thuds, the buyer from Japan entered from the next room. The 2 men exchanged cautious greetings, and then the Japanese collector proceeded to examine the merchandise. And now this section here ends. Ding, ding, ding. So you got to be thinking about this now. We know the jade jaguar is important. It's been playing a role for thousands of years in this story. And we have to wonder, what is Remesio up to? He broke the old man out, somehow escaped with him, stuck Felipe in a jail cell, and now here he is, back in this little town miles away from Mexico City, negotiating with the Pasha and getting some money for the jade jaguar that the old man seems so intent on having. So what happened there? There are some questions that need to be answered, and hopefully we can get to those in the next section. Ding, ding, ding. Stop.